Hello, Glen Sample here. Welcome back. Today's chapter is Chapter 9, The Strange Story of Eugene Noblitt. Chapter 9, The Strange Story of Eugene Noblitt. You may wonder after reading this chapter where the story of Eugene Noblitt fits into the scenario of the Kennedy assassination. We wonder too. But to leave out this interesting piece of the puzzle would not be fair, since it is information that we uncovered along the way of our investigation. In a way, it creates more questions than it answers. But we hope that, like us, you will find it just as fascinating, if not provocative. Thank goodness for assassination books. For even though many are filled with the most bizarre and often untenable theories, there are truths to be found in each one of them. Like Mother used to say, even a broken clock is right twice a day. And so it was with the book that Eugene Noblitt found one day. Hugh McDonald's Appointment in Dallas presented an interesting view of the assassination of President Kennedy. But when Noblitt arrived at pages 53 through 59, his interest turned to shock. On those pages were photographs of a man that he knew. Locating his 1938 Woodrow Wilson High School Crusader yearbook, Gene looked up the man's pictures. Sure enough, there was a strong resemblance to a high school friend by the name of Ralph Gebb. Even though there was a period of 25 years between photographs. In a letter we received, Noblitt elaborated, "I recognized the pictures as soon as I saw them. They looked just like Ralph Gebb. Actually, they looked a lot like Ralph's father looked in 1938. Ralph attended Woodrow Wilson High School. He was fair-skinned, light hair, played guard on our football team. Long-waisted, short legs, he stayed in good shape. He grew up just west of the Santa Fe tracks. Tough neighborhood. His father worked as a smith at Weaver Spring and Axle Company in Dallas. When I found the picture of our football team and saw Ralph Gebb standing next to Malcolm Wallace, then bong, bong, the bells went off. I knew about the murder that Malcolm had committed in 1951. And had also heard that LBJ provided his best attorney to defend him. Then we asked him to describe the Wallace that he knew and grew up with in Dallas. Malcolm Wallace attended Woodrow Wilson High School, graduating magna cum laude. He was dark-complected, had dark hair, brown eyes. If he were in Mexico, he could pass as a Mexican. If we were in Cuba, he could pass as a Cuban. He was quarterback on the school football team. He was in great shape, tough as nails. His uncle was Secretary of Agriculture in FDR's time in Washington. Actually not confirmed. I don't know if he spoke Spanish, but he spent a lot of time in West Texas where one is used to both Spanish and English. I lost track of Malcolm and Ralph Gebb in 1938 when we graduated. Malcolm went on to the University of Texas at Austin with a lot of our Woodrow Wilson High School football players, and then into the Marines, I think. I never did hear about Ralph Gebb again. I only recently heard of the JFK Assassination Information Center, and so I got in contact with them and gave them this information. You have my permission to use this material if it will help in finding the person or persons who engineered this assassination of JFK. We also learned that Mr. Noblitt, a Dallas businessman in 1963, had actually been around the corner from Dealey Plaza on November 22nd. In another note, he relates, "Dear Mark, as per your request, this is the way I saw and heard the shooting. We, Jack Worley, and I had been to the FHA office to pick up a block of housing commitments. John Worley treated us to lunch. The sidewalks were full of people waiting to see JFK. We made the exit from the sandwich shop just in time to see the president's car streaking down Main Street. All of the people moved from the sidewalk into the street. We just moved to the curb to see the president. It was a shock to see the red-haired president riding in an open car. After all the problems in elevators, signs and newspaper notices, the other cars followed, but all eyes were on the president. He looked great. The cars made a right turn. We walked across Main Street. The next thing we heard was the shots. It sounded like we were in the hill country, deer hunting. The deer were running, and 3 or 4 hunters were shooting. I made the remark, "They got him." We ran to the car, turned the radio on. We heard, "The police are running up the grassy slope. The president has been shot." The rest is history. We cried all the way to the office, closed the office, and went home in shock. Having personally met and talked to Mr. Noblitt extensively, as well as corresponding with him several times, I found him both reasonable as well as honest. He certainly had nothing to gain by fabricating this information. He is as sincere as a man can be about this identification of Ralph Gebb as the man the CIA mistakenly identified as Lee Harvey Oswald. Additionally, he did attend the same high school at the same time as Malcolm Wallace and Ralph Gebb. If it were simply a story about a friend who looks similar to a man in a CIA photograph, thought to be Oswald, then I might have my doubts. Maybe a case of mistaken identity? Maybe an overly excited JFK buff? No big deal. But add to this picture the fact that Ralph Gebb was Malcolm Wallace's best friend, supported by the testimony of a fellow classmate who knew them well, and you have more than a simple coincidence. In support of this is a yearbook photo showing Wallace and Gebb, best friends as well as teammates, standing next to one another. What you have are 2 separate individuals who are both independently connected to the Kennedy assassination case by 2 separate threads of evidence. First of all, Gebb is suspected of complicity in the assassination by his identification as the man in the CIA photograph thought to be Lee Harvey Oswald. And secondly, Malcolm Wallace is suspected of complicity in the assassination by testimony from Madeline Brown. If the CIA's Oswald photograph truly was that of Ralph Gebb, then it is anyone's guess as to what he was doing in Mexico City on exactly the same day that Oswald was purportedly there. We have no theories to advance on this peripheral matter. Other assassination researchers have suggested that Oswald never visited the embassies in Mexico City at all, but that an imitation Oswald made the visits in his place, using his name. They theorized that this Oswald stand-in, Gebb perhaps, was therefore covertly photographed by the surveillance camera of the CIA, posted near the entrances of the Soviet and Cuban embassies, and that they then forwarded this information to the FBI on the evening of the assassination, only to find out that their photographed Oswald was not the real Oswald. In Dick Russell's book, The Man Who Knew Too Much, this subject is dealt with. On page 496, under the subheading, The Unidentified Man, we quote, "Another CIA memorandum makes reference to 20 photographs of Oswald taken in Mexico City. But only 12 pictures have ever been released, and they are all of the wrong man." Another CIA memo, dated November 22, 1963, reference is made to our conversation of November 22nd, in which I requested permission to give the FBI legal attaché copies of photographs of a certain person who is known to you. A special flight with these photos was then made from Mexico City to Dallas via a naval attaché, and more to CIA headquarters by pouch that night. If not Oswald, then who was a certain person who is known to you? It came out in 1975 that the mystery man was photographed outside the Soviet embassy on October 1st, the same day that Oswald was known to have made another visit there. On October 10th, the CIA had sent a cable to the FBI, the State Department, and the Navy, headed Lee Henry Oswald. It read, "On 1st of October 1963, a reliable and sensitive source in Mexico reported that an American male who identified himself as Lee Oswald contacted the Soviet embassy in Mexico City inquiring whether the embassy had received any news concerning a telegram which had been sent to Washington. The American was described as approximately 35 years old, with an athletic build, about 6 feet tall, with a receding hairline. That fit the description of the man in the picture, but it was obviously not the slender 23-year-old Oswald. But whoever it was, he appeared to have been impersonating Oswald at the Soviet embassy gate." Similar treatment is given by Jim Marrs in Crossfire, the plot that killed Kennedy. We quote from page 195. While the CIA stated that both the Cuban and Soviet embassies were under photographic surveillance during Oswald's visit, they could offer no proof. Lamely, CIA officials explained to the Warren Commission that the camera at the Soviet embassy was turned off on Saturdays, the day Oswald supposedly was there, and that the camera at the Cuban embassy just happened to break down the day Oswald was there. However, the day of the assassination, CIA officials sent photographs taken outside the Soviet embassy in Mexico City to the FBI, claiming they were of Oswald. They are obviously of someone else. This someone appears to be about 35 years old, 6 feet tall, with an athletic build. CIA officials admitted there had been a mix-up on the photos. The House Select Committee on Assassinations noted that Oswald allegedly made at least 5 trips to the 2 embassies and found it hard to believe that he was not photographed even once. The committee expressed the belief that photographs of Oswald might have been taken and subsequently lost or destroyed. The absence of any photographs of Oswald at the embassies raised a suspicion that an impostor was posing as Oswald during these embassy visits. End of quotes. Why do so many feel that Oswald was impersonated at these embassies? Well, some speculate that Oswald was being painted or set up to look like a textbook assassin, or that by associating Oswald with the Cuban and Soviet embassy, the blame for the planned assassination would automatically shift to Cuba, causing a swift retaliation to that bastion of communism. Oswald certainly appears to have had a deep interest in Cuba and Cuban affairs. How much of this was genuine and how much of this has been staged will remain a center of hot debate for decades. But in November of 1999, a news story broke nationwide that led many more people to believe that Oswald may have been impersonated in Mexico City. Part of the news story was that FBI Director Hoover briefed President Johnson shortly after the assassination about not only photos, but tape recordings that had been examined by federal agents. We have up here the tape and the photograph of the man who was at the Soviet embassy using Oswald's name, Hoover told Johnson, according to a transcript of that call released in 1993. That picture and the tape do not correspond to this man's voice nor to his appearance. In other words, it appears that there is a second person who was at the Soviet embassy down there. So the theory that Oswald was being impersonated in Mexico City was not originated by assassination writers, but by the FBI itself. After months of searching for Ralph Gebb, we eventually found his daughter living in San Diego, California. She informed me that her father died in 1990 after a long career in the Air Force. Ralph's brother, Fred, was an Army intelligence/CIA officer who died a few years before Ralph. My family used to joke about having a spy in the family, she said, but Uncle Fred would never talk about it. Somewhere in all of this, there must be a connection. But, as in many old mysteries, the trail appears cold and growing steadily colder. Note, Eugene Noblitt passed away on July 4th, 1998.